First of all, a bit of background. You'll be familiar with Epilepsy12. We've been going since 2009, and since then we've been moving to more continuous live data collection and annual reporting. So it's been a sort of cycle of improvement, and we've been modifying the ways and routes we do that over time to try and make things easier and better. So this new platform is the next thing we've done along that journey. You'll know we're trying to catch each child and young person with newly diagnosed epilepsy in England and Wales, and get their data and their story into the platform, and we try and look particularly at their first year of care. So the platform is around capturing that story for each child, and then we look at a yearly cohort, and then we analyse their results and we publish the data talking about that first year of care for that year's worth of cohort of children. So we tend to catch about 2,000 to 3,000 children each year for England and Wales, and we're about to report cohort 5. So that's coming out in the summer this year. So this new platform has been designed to catch children in cohort 6 and those children going forwards, and we developed it to start from December, and going forward this platform is the only way you can enter data into the audit now. And we've done it really in response to a number of things. The old platform did serve the audit well, but there were a number of issues that we were keen to improve. So we've been doing things to try and make it quicker, to make the data load smaller, to try and focus just on those children with epilepsy rather than lots of data for children who don't turn out to have epilepsy. And we've been trying to make it a bit more instant for people putting the data in, so that when they put the data in, they get an immediate sense of how that child's doing and how their group of children are doing. So there's instant reporting. And then the other thing that people have been asking for is those with bigger trusts and health boards, because they see something that allows you to look at a sort of higher granularity. So those are the things that people were asking for, and those are the things we've built into the new system, along with other things. So I think you'll get a glimpse of those things as you get the walk through later on. But that's just to give you a bit of background and context about the platform. And just before I hand over to Simon and Marcus, just to thank people so much. It's this audit is so dependent on people putting the story in of children into the platform, and we really appreciate people's time and effort to help us with the audit. It really is appreciated, and we're particularly keen to make sure that effort turns into benefit for the children and young people through the audit process. So thank you. I am now going to hand over to Marcus first, and then after that Simon, and they're going to just give you a bit of a feel about the platform and why it's different, and just a little bit about the story about how we came to build it through the College of Paediatrics and Child Health. So I'm going to hand over to Marcus now.
Hi there. So I'm Marcus Bohr. I'm a GP in Yorkshire. I'm also a software developer, and I've been working for the RCPCH for about 4 years on various projects, including the digital growth charts and now Epilepsy12. So I'm one of the team that, with Simon and others, have brought Epilepsy12 into the college as a piece of software that's owned by the college, and we're very proud of what we've managed to achieve. Previously, the software was essentially outsourced. It was bought from another company, and as Colin has said, there were some things that we wanted to do that were not really feasible using that arrangement. So we've pivoted to building an in-house tool which has the benefit of being a lot more responsive to user needs changes. So we've managed to make it what we think is a better platform for you, the users. And we've also been able to do a few other things, including introducing security measures like two-factor authentication, So you will notice that when you log in, you will have to use a two-factor authentication method, and that's for additional security because this has patient identifiable data in it. We've also been able to make the software open source, which it means that the source code is publicly available. Now, it's very important to understand the distinction between the source code and the data within the platform. So the data within the platform is absolutely protected to every level that we can. We have a full IG impact assessment. We've done a privacy impact assessment. We've had the platform penetration tested by an external provider to prove that there are no bugs. And we have the two-factor authentication. So that's all to protect the data. But the code that makes the platform is something that we've decided to share with the world. And that means that not only do we get to use it as an audit engine, but the college has actually started to find that other users are starting to show interest in having a generic audit engine that allows national audits to be done with a nice user interface with all the right security at scale across the NHS. So potentially that allows the RCPCH to sort of become involved in helping other audits to happen and driving down the cost for everybody that's involved, including Epilepsy12 potentially. So we all share in that benefit by pooling our resources essentially. And we drive up the quality because we mean that what it means is that instead of each audit having to fight for its own platform, we can create some kind of much more generic audit platform which will give high quality audit tools to everybody. So it's a real win-win-win situation really, the open source thing. I will post for those who are interested. If you do have questions about open source, I can answer those separately because it's not really for everybody to be interested in. And I'll post a link to our source code, which again is quite a niche interest, but just really to prove that it's a real thing and it's out there. And I'll hand over to Simon. Simon, you're muted.
Sorry, thanks, Marcus. Nice to know that tech people still make mistakes, right? So I'm Simon. I'm also a paediatrician. I work at King's in South London, and I'm a diabetes endocrinology guy. So I'm an interloper in the world of neurology. I've learned, I can't tell you how much stuff working with Colin on this project. So I'm also a software dev, but I'm full-time endocrinologist otherwise. I think a lot of this has already been said. I was sort of billed just to talk a little bit about the future of the platform, which in some ways Marcus has covered. I think the big picture for us is that it doesn't just stop at epilepsy, but actually it moves into all the other audits that the RCPCH is commissioned to deliver. So that's like the NPDA for the diabetologists, it's the neonatal stuff, possibly other things. And the benefit that you get from us, I hope, is that you get medics that sort of understand what we're trying to do. So the whole platform has been built around the user experience, and who better to do it than a medic who fills these things out as well. So a lot of the stuff we've done has been around making it, we work with the Epilepsy12 team to get the numbers of measures down so that you weren't collecting too much data. And then we spent a lot of time making the user interface much more usable. So you don't have to fill out a load of data and then click a button at the bottom to save it. It saves it as you go. And it's broken up into bite-sized chunks. And hopefully, as Nikki shows you in the demo, you can go back and forward, because we know that real life doesn't mean that you get your diagnosis and then you get your test and then you get your treatment, and that's how it is in the books. But in reality, you book your MRI, but you don't get the result for many weeks. And so there are other bits of the audit that you might want to fill out in the meantime. And sometimes you don't know stuff that you should have maybe known at the beginning but didn't come to light until later, so you might want to go back and fill those things in later. So a lot of the whole building bit has been around the clinical aspects, which I hope you'll find useful. And the other thing to say is that the whole Describe tool, that all came from Colin. That was a bit of a journey, and there are this bit around the description. So like if you're describing a child's, the semiology of a seizure, we were capturing data in the past that we weren't really using, but now hopefully you'll see when Nikki comes to put in an episode, you'll get that sense that actually some of the data that you use real English to describe what you see in front of you of a young person having a seizure, we're hopefully going to be mining some of that raw text to give us keywords, if you like, that we can then do all sorts of interesting analysis on later. So there's a kind of interface here between that goes possibly beyond audit into describing what the lived experience of people with epilepsy actually is, and what are useful words that we should be using as clinicians to describe their episodes. So there's a whole load of extra little spin-off stuff. The final thing I should probably say is that we're working, part of the platform has this thing on the back of it called an API, and you don't really need to know what an API is, but the concept of it is that hopefully in the future we will expose to your hospital software a kind of a pipeline, so that the data that you would enter into your electronic health record would sort of automatically go straight into the audit, and you wouldn't therefore then have to have even this, you wouldn't need to engage with the platform. So that would be sort of the big picture in the future. We're building it already. And for those early adopters that have electronic health records that are able to interface with the college, then, in the relatively near future, you should be able to do that already. But that's sort of the idea, is that you'd be able in the future to enter data once and it would come down the wire to the college just as part of that, and you wouldn't then have to spend your time filling out forms and so on as you currently have to. Good, I'm going to stop there. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll obviously chat at the end, answer questions and so on.
Thanks, Simon. I'm handing over to you, Nikki, now.
Great, thank you. Yes, hello everyone. I'm Nikki Rajan. I'm the project manager for Epilepsy12. So I'm just going to walk you through a demo of the platform now, so you can get kind of experience of how we enter data in it. So just while I share my screen, just to say thank you again to Colin, Simon and Marcus and the rest of the developer team for working on this. It's been a long road, I think, but really proud of what we've got out there, and hopefully you will find it useful as well. So this is the homepage that you get to when you go onto the platform. And if you can press at the top the sign in button, it will bring you to this page. And these are kind of the additional security bits that we've added in that Marcus described. So when you've entered your email and password, got the additional capture button, and then once you pass this, you'll need to do the two-factor authentication. So I think that's a real benefit that this new platform brings, that it's just added security and protects against invaluable access. So a note here as well is just at the bottom that you will need new credentials set up. So if you haven't already, you can't use the same username password as a previous system, but you can get set up if you contact us or your lead clinician. So what I've done is I'm now going to take you to this testing site. So all of the information now is just made up data, dummy data. It's not real patient information at all. It's just been created for the purposes of this webinar. So here I've done all the logging in and two-factor authentication before, and you can see that I'm logged in and I've been promoted to a doctor in this instance. But so we've just added me to Kingsmill Hospital, which is in Sherwood Forest, so part of Colin's team. So firstly, what I'll show you is you can see that we're on the organisation dashboard. So that's one additional benefit of this platform, is that we've entered in sub-trust or health board data entry, because we know that a lot of mergers have happened and those larger services sometimes have multiple hospital sites and they can be quite different from each other in some instances. So whereas originally we've kind of only reported and allowed data entry at trust level and health board level in Wales, now there's this type of organisation, as we've called it. So you can have multiple organisations within a trust or health board. So firstly, you can view all the staff at your organisation here, or you can switch to the trust level. And here it's just myself as a demo account there, but you're able to see the list of services users within your service. And then you can add people by clicking this button, fill in their details. It will go automatically to the organisation that you're clicked under, but you can select their role as a lead clinician, or administrator there. So I'll just press cancel for the moment, but that's showing you how you can add new users to help with the data entry. And then there will kind of always be this button here that return to organisation dashboard. So that's your almost home page as such. So then next, if we go to looking at the children and young people in your service, you can click this button on the right, and then that will take you to this audit submissions page. So here I'm currently on trust level, which is Sherwood Forest, but I can switch to organisation level, which is Kingsmill. However, here, if it was Colin, for example, logged in, he'd be able to see the other organisations, and you can flick between them. But if we just go back to Kingsmill, you'll see the list here. So the first step to adding a patient is to add a new child or young person by this pinkish button here. And if you click on that, it will take you to the demographic details of the patient, so the name, date of birth, etc. I'm not going to fill this out now, but you can imagine once you fill this out all in, you can press save. And there's kind of filters here that it won't let you add a date of birth in the future. For example, it'll check that the postcode's a real one, that the NHS number is a valid number in the right format, etc. And also that there's not already a patient registered with that NHS number. So we've built in those validity tests here. So I'm just going to press cancel for the moment. But once you've completed that, the patient will then appear on this list. So this is kind of your case list for your organisation or trust. And you can see here different names. And again, these are just some dummy patients automatically generated for this webinar. So I wanted to highlight here the different kind of versions or progress that you have of the patients. So here you can see this is kind of greyed out, and that's because this patient has had all their data entered and has now submitted their record to Epilepsy12 by this button. But if you hover over here, you can unsubmit it if you wanted to make any amendments to the record, for example. But this just means it can help you track, like, you've entered all the data for that patient, it's ready to go and can be submitted. However, one thing that is different from this platform that we had in the other one is that you don't need to submit your records. So just automatically after the deadline is passed, we'll just take all the completed records. You don't need to do that additional step of locking and submitting to Epilepsy12. That's you had to do in the previous platform. But there is the option for you to help kind of track which records are being completed by pressing that submit button. So the next step is you'll see the first two records have a pink tick, and that means that the data has been completed, it's ready for upload, you've answered all the questions, whereas the ones below it are still blue and it says data incomplete, and that's because all the questions haven't been answered. But you can see on these how many have, so you can easily track your progress against each record. So what I'm going to do now is just select this patient here and walk you through how to complete their data entry. So firstly, there's kind of two buttons here that you can navigate to. First is the edit button or delete a child. So if you click on that, it will take you to the demographic details. So if you notice their name is slightly misspelled or you put their date of birth in wrong, you can edit that here and then just press save. However, also you can delete a child here if you realise that they're not eligible for the audit. So that's also an option. So I'll just press save and it should take me back to this case list page. So then the next button you have is the audit button, and that's the main one for the audit entry. So if we click on that, it will bring you to this record page and you can see the details here. So currently nothing has been filled out for this patient apart from those demographic details. But when you scroll down, you can see here all the eligibility criteria for Epilepsy12. And if you believe this patient is eligible, then you have to press this, I confirm all criteria present. And without doing this, you can't proceed for the rest of the data entry. But if I click that here, then that goes pink, and I can then proceed to the next bit. So you can see the trust that it's under, the patient is under at the moment, and you can put in the first paediatric assessment form. So I'm just going to pick a date in January of this year, and then I can press set. Important thing is here that it asks for you to confirm the date, because you can't change this. If you do make a mistake, you can contact Epilepsy12 staff and we'll help correct that, but it is important to try and get this date correct, as it informs the cohort and submission deadline, etc. So I'm going to confirm that here, and you'll see then the cohort, when they would complete their first year of care, and the submission deadline is automatically populated here. So if we scroll back up, this is your kind of, on the left-hand side, your view of all the data tabs you need to complete. And as you can see, because we've filled in the confirm the eligibility and filled in the first assessment dates, you've got a pink tick here to show your progress. So then essentially we can work your way down to complete all the questions. But as it was highlighted earlier, you don't have to go in order. You can kind of jump around and pick whichever questions you want to complete, and try and do this prospectively through the year as you gain more information through the patients. So I'm just going to walk you through a few examples and not complete the whole form now. But if we go to the multitaxial diagnosis bit, I'm going to try and add an episode. So here you can see add new episode, and then that will take you to further drop down. So you can put in the date that the episode happened. So if I just select today and press set, can have that an exact, approximate, or not known date, and then this one will disappear if it's not known. And then you can select an episode definition there. If I just keep going, and if you have a description of the episode, you can press yes here, and then you can write in this description, and it should pick out 3 keywords for you. So if I just start typing a random description here, so you can see some walking has been picked out as a keyword. Sorry. So what will I correct that? What you can say, I've just typed in a random description there, but it's picked out keywords at the bottom. But one thing to highlight, that I've spelt memory impairment wrong there, but it's still picked out as a keyword. So I think that's quite a useful thing to highlight. And then you can kind of write a freehand description of what suits you. And then if I go save new episode now, it will bring us back to the top. But you can see that there's no tick there. It says incomplete data fields. So if I go and edit that, and I go down and I realize this question hasn't been answered. So I can click epileptic, select an onset, and again, I'm just going to fill out some random points and then save this episode. It should hopefully come up as a pink tick now. So that's your elements where you can see where you completed the question. Pink tick is yes, and these still blue circles are still incomplete, and you have those to go. And then similar things of going down the syndrome, causes, and relevant impairments, behavioural and education issues. So under cause here, it's going to highlight, we've got a list, however, it's not an exhaustive list. So currently we're just asking, if you go on there and you find a cause isn't on our list, to please contact us and we can add it to the platform. And then hopefully we'll just build on our list and make it more complete. We've chosen not to have an other option for the cause because we found previously that sometimes the other option was selected despite there being a cause in the drop down. So it's the method we've got so far. So please do let us know and we can add some additional causes onto there. So then the last thing that I was going to show, if we go to the milestones tab, this asks you about the kind of professional and expert input the child or young person has received in their year of care. So we can select yes if they've seen a consultant paediatrician, and again that will go pink. And then it will ask for the date of referral and achievement. So if I just go back to April and then set that and do the same. For this date, and then you can pick a random service as well to add in. So now we've got lots of pink ticks there, which is great. And I'm just going to go and select some of these options as well, as you can then indicate their input to epilepsy surgery services. And the final question is about epilepsy specialist nurse input. So if I say no now. So you can see here that now we've got 2 pink ticks, but the others have been incomplete yet. And then there's 7 tabs which are trying to get the information on the first year of care for the child or young person. And then the 8th tab is this performance summary. So if we click on that, you'll get an overview of the 10 Epilepsy12 performance indicators, our KPIs, and you can see here which have been achieved for this child. So you'll see a pink tick if you've met the performance indicator. So this child has seen a paediatrician with expertise within 2 weeks of referral, which is great. We've got data incomplete for some of the measures at the bottom, and that's because we haven't yet answered the questions. So you can see that. Whereas these triangles to the exclamation point is where the KPI has not yet been achieved for the child. So here you can realise this performance summary will update as soon as the question is answered in the form. So if we go back to the milestones bit, I've kind of realised, oh, I think actually they have seen an ESN, or I filled in this form and then a month later they've kind of seen an ESN, I can go and change this back to yes, and it will ask me for the date of input, which I'm just going to set as today, or referral and input. And you can see the time to review as well at the bottom there. So now if we go back to the performance summary, you've now got a tick here. So you can see the real-time updates of that and the real-time information that you can get, which is really useful. So once you've gone through and completed all of these tabs, then all of this information at patient level, the KPI data, if we go back to the organisation dashboard, and you scroll down, you can see some information at your organisation of the completed patient records for your organisation and trust. A bit of information about the demographics of all your patients here, and some very pretty maps designed to show you where you are in the country and regions, etc. But here we have a clinician-facing dashboard. So this, all the patient information from those performance summaries get aggregated here to give you the KPI data at your organisational level right up to national level. So you can see here all the KPIs, and if you scroll down, you'll see the others. And if you imagine there's more data here, it would be a lot more information there, but you can see where you place against all the regional averages, and also where there's bits where you haven't completed data yet or you're not applicable. And then if you go down to the individual measures and we pick ESN, you can see just a snapshot of all the performance at all the different levels, and some bar charts at the bottom as well, which I won't show now. But these are really designed to, as Lucy said, make it easier to enter data onto the platform. We've kind of all got yes or no options, not a lot of free text to try and reduce the time to enter a record for each patient, but also try and make the most use out of that data. So give you that real-time feedback in the performance summaries, and as live as possible feedback via these dashboards to give you regional benchmarking information, you can track QI, etc. So those are kind of a whistle-stop tour through entering patient data. But I will stop sharing now, and I think we can hopefully open up to some questions. So actually, if you put something in the chat, we can try and go through them. But as they're coming up, I could start by asking a few that we've tended to get from our users. So one thing that I didn't emphasize at the beginning is that this new platform, the eligibility criteria is children and young people with a confirmed diagnosis of epilepsy, and then we look at their first year of care from that. But previously, we had a model where we collected information on all patients with proximal episodes and then whittled it down to those with confirmed epilepsy. And often that was done through EEG departments, entering those first patients on, and then they'd be verified and their data entry would be completed. So shifting to this model, it's going to ask Colin, with his clinician hat on, of how you've identified those patients that are eligible for the audit outside of the platform and then gone in to complete their data entry.
Thanks, Nikki. Yeah, that question has been asked by Nisha in the chat. So yeah, previously it was quite a burden of activity on the EEG departments, in that they would put a lot of children into the system having a first EEG, but some of them wouldn't turn out to have epilepsy. So there were a lot of data capture for children going into the system, which didn't actually serve the audit reports. So we, in this platform, we moved to a different model where we didn't need to rely on the EEGs to find the children. And then we've said we're just going to capture children with epilepsy. So that means teams or systems need to have a different way of knowing who gets a diagnosis of epilepsy, so they can put them into the system. So that doesn't mean you can't use the EEG departments and your relationships with the EEG departments to find out who's had first EEG. It's just that process isn't built into the system. And I think different services will do different things. For us at Sherwood, I've decided to look at those, find the children with epilepsy in retrospect by looking at those children I've sent for an EEG. So my department keeps a list of children who've had an EEG sent, and then I use that as my starting point to make sure I know which children might have epilepsy. And then the other thing I'm doing is trying where possible to put the child in to the system at the point of diagnosis, even if it's just to put their name and demographics in as a holding place, so that they're in the system ready to be found later. I think different services will need to find different ways, but overall this should reduce the time burden across the system in terms of putting just the right children in. But yeah, think about having some sort of way of knowing as a system who's got a new diagnosis of epilepsy, which we should be doing anyway. So for example, some services I've heard about when the epilepsy nurse hears about a child, they put them on the system. Other people are having continuing relationships with EEG departments. Others are using the coding within their EHR to find the new children with epilepsy, or some are using a variety of those ways. So that's the EEG side of things. The other question I've seen about is time. So it was more of a comment rather than a question. And I'll start that by asking Simon, can you tell us what you've done to try and make the system a bit quicker than what it was before? If you start off with that, and then perhaps I'll say a little bit of something about the time resource.
So we had quite a lot of conversations right at the very beginning when we were planning, when we were scoping it all out. And I think the first thing that struck us all was that we were gathering a lot of data, a lot of which wasn't necessarily being used in the old platform. So the first thing that we did was to go back to the drawing board and look at sort of with a more laser focus on all of those measures and how we were capturing all of that information, and then turn as much of those questions into binary answers. So you kind of have three states. Speaking as a developer, you've got like a true or a false or a not, a none state where you haven't yet scored it. So for every measure, by and large, apart from the date, you either have one, you either haven't scored it yet, or else it's a true or it's a false. So that makes data analysis quite quick. it makes filling it out really lovely, because we can have all these toggle buttons. That means that you can see at a glance whether you've scored something or haven't scored it. And if you have scored it, then it's nice and quick. Has this child had a seizure? Yes, no, that kind of thing. The second thing that we did was a bit more of a techie thing, but those of you that are familiar using your bank, or booking something through a restaurant or something like that, typically you're probably familiar with this idea that you fill out a long form and then you have to click a button at the bottom that then submits all of that information to the back end to be processed, whether that's Amazon or whether it's whatever, your local restaurant. And what we did deliberately was that, knowing NHS tech, how we're all relying on computers that are 10 or 15 years old most of the time, that take ages to boot up, that you don't want to be 15 minutes into typing in a load of information, and then by the time you get to the submit button, something's happened, like the Wi-Fi's gone out or something, and then you lose all of that time. So we deliberately architected it around this idea that the moment you press the button, it saves your progress. And that means that if something happens, or you're in clinic and you get called away, then you don't lose. If you walk away from your computer, you don't lose your progress. That was really important. And then I suppose the third bit was this whole idea of knowing that clinical life is actually doesn't follow a schedule. Although you learn at med school, don't you, that everything starts with taking history and moves on through examination investigations. In reality, things in real life often happen slightly out of order. And so the whole idea was that although there were those 7 bars down the side of the screen, you could fill those all out at your own speed and your own time, and you could go back and forwards. And you didn't have to then keep in your mind where you were in the process. The computer could keep track for you and would report in some kind of meaningful way, how many measures you'd forgotten or how many still needed to be done, and so on. And some of the feedback we've had actually is that process is still not quite tied down. There are still people who feel like they've finished a measure but haven't actually, and then get a bit confused about where the missing one is. So there's possibly a bit better reporting that we could do around that. And I guess that's my closing point, would be to say that what you see is not necessarily the final article. Like most things in software, we send it out into the world to be used because we want users to use it and then tell us what they don't like about it as well as what they like about it, and then we can improve it in a sort of iterative way. So if there are new features that you would like, or there are frustrations you have with the way it is, we'll try and improve those. And certainly we've got quite a sort of dynamic workflow that allows us to be relatively responsive. So some of the things that you asked for this week could potentially end up live next week. It sort of depends what it is, really. And we have regular meetings within the E12 team and the tech team to make that standardizes this process of review and triages issues so that we can act on the most urgent ones. And we've got a backlog of stuff for kind of desirable features in future. So like, for example, I would love on the dashboard for it to be personalized to you guys. So if you in your own personal clinic would like to have a nice summary of all the kids with learning difficulties, for example, that you could be able to have that and as a sort of widget that you would drag and drop onto your homepage, whereas somebody else in a different part of the country might be much more interested in the genetic epilepsies or something, and so you could have that as a summary on your page. And the longer that we have the audit in place, the easier it will be for us to individualize some of these requests. So I mean, I don't want to make too many big promises, but my sense is that
I'm remembering those things you said, Simon. Yeah,
I think I'd like those maps at the moment. They tell you where you are, and obviously you all know where you are, so it's possibly not that helpful. But in future, I would like us to plot all of your kids, for example, on the maps, so that you can see things like how far people have to travel, and knowing the median distance that your patients travel to clinic, for example, to me is a super useful clinical thing. Particularly now that we're living in a world very much informed by things like, you know, indices of multiple deprivation and so on. So actually it'd be quite helpful to know how many of our kids are in a particular postcode and what their IMD is. And, you know, if there's lots of them in our clinic that have come from one particular area, should we be making reasonable adjustments? And we can possibly even drill down into which kids those are. So this is sort of straying into audit as a clinical tool. It's not a clinical tool, it's very much an audit, but there may be spin-off benefits that we can learn about nationally where our patients are as well on the reporting side, and possibly might be useful to you as, you know, as leaders of your own clinics to be able to personalise some of the care that you offer to your kids.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I think in terms of telling you in minutes, I think probably the new platform takes about half as much time per child with epilepsy compared to the old one, and then we're putting in about a third as many children altogether into the system, so the overall time load is considerably reduced. And for me in my trust, I'm tending to put in between 20 to 40 new children with epilepsy per year, so that translates to about 10 to 20 hours for our team per year, so 1 to 2 days. So I make a point of putting aside a couple of days each year, so if I've not put the children in by then, I can play catch up. So that's how I'm managing my time. But none of us have enough time, and we don't have enough time or resource to look after the kids with epilepsy, let alone do quality improvement stuff. So there does need to be a job planning, commissioning side to this to give us the time we need to put this rich data in, and we're not there yet, but that is part of the story. So that's the timeliness side of things. I'm going to look through for other questions. Have you spotted any other questions that have stood out for you, Nikki, that we could pick up?
Yeah, I think definitely. Thank you. Yeah, just to reiterate what Simon said, that this is not a mature platform, and so we're still in the early stages, and we're very, very open to receiving positive and negative feedback, so that you can help us improve it. And ultimately, it's you guys that are using the platform, so we kind of want to make it easier for you, but also give you the data in the way that's most helpful. So one of the questions was on the kind of looking at other average times for seeing a paediatrician. So the performance summaries and the dashboard that I showed are on our KPIs. So we have 10 of them. And that's just the initial data that we put on there and the reporting elements. So Epilepsy12 will continue to produce our annual reports, our full extended analyses, trust reports, etc. outside of this. This is just the first iteration of what you can get live. And then again, hopefully, as we build the platform and improve it, we can make more of an interactive dashboard and customizable reports. I'm not going to promise, because it might be a little way down the line, but having that feedback is really useful for us, because then we can plan in what to prioritize and what's most useful to you. So please do keep emailing us or using the forum to voice those. So that was something about the average time.
And I've seen a question, what about the children who are classed as possible unsure? I understand they're not included. Is it only confirmed epilepsy? So yeah, you can put a child into the holding place when you're not sure, but only when they've got confirmed epilepsy do we begin to be interested in the data. So that's in contrast to before. And a lot of children, obviously before they get the diagnosis of epilepsy, do have a period where you're not sure. That's not unusual, but we're simply interested in those when they do get the confirmed diagnosis of epilepsy. But the first paediatric assessment, the date of that is the key point. So for example, that's what locks them into a particular cohort, even if the confirmation of epilepsy is six months later. So yeah, we don't report on any child who remains non-epileptic or where there's continuing uncertainty. It's just those with confirmed epilepsy we report on. Someone's asked about whether the data for a single patient can be done by 2 different professionals. Yeah, absolutely. The system's designed so that you can work as much of a team as possible. So there's no reason why the team can contribute to the care record for one children together, and different teams are doing it in different ways. Some will just have one person doing it for everyone. Some will share the load. Some people will pivot from one person to another through the timelines. Some people might bring in a different type of doctor as they join the team and leave, or do it as a project. So there's various ways you can create a team to contribute to the data entry. And I think that's great. If the more you can do it as a team and do it together, then the better. And because it's live, in theory, you could use this as a clinical tool. You know, if you decided as a team, every new child will put in with epilepsy, and we'll do live reporting. You could begin to use it as a way of confirming to yourselves as a team you've done the right things by that child as a live checklist. So some teams can choose to use it like that as a way to improve care there and then. So those are different things about ways you can work as a team. I'm toggling through questions now. Has anyone seen any questions that jump out at them?
There was a few around the cohorts. I think it was on that kind of place holding a child with a new epilepsy now, even though they'd actually be in cohort 7. So I would make sure that when you're place holding a patient, you enter kind of their demographic details, and then you'll need to confirm the first assessment date when you confirm the eligibility. So they would kind of be placeholder there, not under a cohort. It's only when you confirm that eligibility that they'd be allocated to the cohort depending on that date. So you can definitely, as you're seeing the patients now throughout the year, add them on, and then once you've got a bit more information on there, go back to the record, confirm the eligibility, put on the assessment date, etc. So I think that should be fine. And then similarly, if you find out that the patient ultimately doesn't have epilepsy, you can delete the child from the platform as well. So although they won't be included in our analyses, it's probably best practice to not have their details on our platform if you definitely know they're not eligible for the audit. And I've just seen one come through as well about cohort allocation. So yes, that happens automatically when you put the first assessment date in. It will automatically link you to a cohort and show the deadline, etc.
There's been a couple of questions about definitions, and there's a question about definition of paediatrician with expertise and definition of first assessment. So each term we use in the audit does have a definition behind it, and you can imagine some of those definitions are trickier to come up with others, but we have tried to be quite rigorous in our use of language. So if you go looking in the system, you'll find the definitions, but just for the purposes of affirming to you now, so paediatrician with expertise in epilepsy, this can be a consultant paediatric neurologist or a general paediatrician who's got defined expertise, and we would expect them usually to have some means of showing their competency in training epilepsy, see children with epilepsy regularly, and participate in at network type level, and be part of the epilepsy network and take part in audit. And we would assume that most trusts are able to say who therefore does or doesn't have expertise, such that they can answer that question, but we don't police who does or doesn't have expertise. There's no national register of expertise, but it is a defined entity. And the first assessment is really important. So the first paediatric assessment is a real pinch point for a lot of the data hanging off for the audit, and this is when the child first has input from the paediatric team. So that could be in an outpatient basis, the paediatrician going to ED, the child being seen in an outpatient or inpatient assessment. So any setting, but it's that first interaction with a paediatric team that counts as first assessment. So there's, but everything has a definition, so it should be clear and consistent and objective across the audit. There's been a question, so what if confirmed diagnosis over a year after first assessment? Yeah, that's true. They wouldn't feel they would, because that's fairly exceptional. There will be some children, but that exception would mean that child doesn't benefit from inclusion in the audit. So yeah, we've had to have some type of pragmatic cut off. When we did the some years ago when we looked at the designing the methodology, we determined that most children have a diagnosis of epilepsy within 1 year of first paediatric assessment. So it's only the exception where that's not the case.
Is it worth also just mentioning quickly opt-outs? Is that helpful?
Yeah. Okay, Simon, did you want to take that on, or Nikki, or me? I don't mind. Did you want to go with that one, Nikki?
That's a good point. Thank you, Simon. So yes, the Epilepsy12 is exempt from applying the national data opt-outs. That's NHS England only. So patients that are choosing to opt out in that way can still be entered onto the audit. So you can continue as usual. However, patients can, of course, their patients and their families can choose to opt out of Epilepsy12 specifically. So if you, or they can contact our team as well to do that. We can exclude them from the audit and kind of remove their information from the platform. That would just be by deleting it. So part of the eligibility criteria is that they've also not opted out in this specific way, but it is a kind of opt-out and not opt-in method. But yeah, there is the exemption to the NHS England national data opt-out. So I think
there's been a further question about the EEG department. Please, can you clarify the role of the EEG department on this new platform? So the EEG department could choose to be a registered participant as the team and help to put children in for a trust. They could choose to participate in that way and help identify children who then may go on to have epilepsy. They're unlikely to know for sure the children have epilepsy and be able to confirm the epilepsy status, but they could agree a role with the epilepsy team to support those sort of placeholder roles, or they could support the teams in knowing who's requested an EEG outside the audit platform if the team would find that helpful. So obviously we still want us to catch all children, but we've not controlled now how the hunting for those children is achieved. And then Tony's asked about what about consultant nurse seeing patients. So that's an interesting question. That's great. Anyone with expertise and competency seeing with children is really welcome. The key types of professional that we look for in the child's journey is that contact with paediatrician with expertise, an epilepsy specialist nurse, and then the complex children who may see a neurologist, or those children with surgical assessment needs who see the KES service. So many other professionals are involved with children with epilepsy, and they're all really valuable, but those are the key ones we look for. And in the mental health world, increasingly we're looking for evidence of professionals with mental health competency supporting those children who need that. So you need to work out individually where you fit into that landscape.
And I think
So
there
we've
was
got
a
time
question
for
about
maybe one more question before we come to an end. It's been great. How many questions we've got? Which was the one you were noticing, Nikki?
It was about the, in particular, MRI, but around some of the dates, because I added that there's a bit of validation already going on in the platform to try and minimize the data entry errors. But one of those is that some of the dates can't be before the date of birth, which probably makes sense for all the questions. But most of them are also limited to before the first assessment date, and that's because we're kind of interested in that first year of care. However, it's very noted, so I think that's something that we'll need to take away and maybe make a change to the platform, that it can be before the first assessment date, but still make that restriction to the date of birth. So that's really helpful feedback. Thank you for everyone that's put that in. But yeah, I think then it's time to say that hopefully this new platform has decreased the amount of time that you guys need to spend on entering the audit data, but hopefully you can get more out of it as well. And do please keep letting us know your feedback and what you want out of the data. But hopefully the interactions that you have will also help minimize the data entry errors, because I think we've had that a lot in the past. It's very hard, it's easy to click a wrong button, etc. But hopefully if these the dashboards and the performance summaries will help minimize those as well. But yeah, we'll keep doing all the other outputs to get you all the data. This just kind of gives you a snapshot. And
yeah, lovely. So I'm going to wrap up. So keep asking us questions. If you've asked a question in chat and we haven't answered it, I think we might try and do a Q&A thing to try and look at those outside the webinar. Any time your feedback's really welcome. So let us know by any means. But we do have lots of ways to tell us what you think. And if you get stuck, give us a shout, email, or phone us, and we'll try and get you right. The platform developers are really keen to improve the system and build on where it's at now, and they're setting up a forum where those who are interested in doing some of the support for this and wider development work, and people can participate in. So look out for chances to participate through the forum. Don't forget, the recording from this is going to be available online. So if you'd like other colleagues to have a look at it, then it'd be great if you could publicize this and point people to this. We're trying to keep this positive and get better, more complete data and make lives better for children with epilepsy. So this is a part of a long journey. We've got a long way to go. Thanks to the team, to Nikki, Marcus, Simon, and Imani in the background, and thanks to all of you for taking time out today to join us. It's really appreciated. And I'll close there and let you get on with your afternoon. It's sunny where I am. Hopefully it's sunny where you are. But have a good day. Thank you very much.